Continuing the top 100 theme here on the call up, we're talking about the just missed. Of course, we talked about a few of them in the mailbag episode on Monday, or I think late Monday, early Tuesday. I don't remember exactly when I published that one. It might have been right at the buzzer at midnight. Regardless, last episode we answered some questions around the just missed, but we wanted to focus on that in this episode. Don't worry, we're not going to spend another 9 minutes on Caden Dana, but there's a lot of prospects that are very, very good that just quite didn't make the cut. So we're going to talk about why they didn't and what they need to do to kind of make that leap into the top 100 other than just keep doing what they're doing and have other guys graduate, which is also an option as well. Of course, I'm Aram Layton. He's Jack McMullen. We'll probably keep it around 10-ish names, varying amounts of time on each, maybe a little bit less than that. But you know, there's I always like to say this too. You could probably pitch me 50 to 75 other prospects that weren't on our top 100 list. And I could say, hey, yeah, that's a sound top 100 case. But for us, these were just like the 10 or 8 or 7 that were the closest. And just that we wanted to talk about a little bit more. Yeah. But there's so many players that are top 100 caliber. And it's not like, if we don't even talk about them on this episode, that they weren't even close to being considered. A lot of players were considered. These are just the ones that I think are a little bit more fun from a talking point perspective.
How do you feel about lying to our listener base off the top? There are 14 names that I've written down.
Your face made me feel like I overshot it.
Nope. we always undershoot. You should.
That's what I assume.
It's like, yeah, no, we're only going to go 30 minutes up an hour 10 later. Okay. But no, I think this is going to be about 30, 35 minutes. I'm excited for you guys to hear this conversation with Jace Young, too, on the back half of this episode, audio only. That'll be good. Tigers prospect that was inside the top 100. But yeah, there are like, 50, 60 names. I think if you had another 3-4 weeks to work with, do you think you could do it top 200?
Yes.
Yeah.
100%. Because there's so many good freaking prospects, dude. Like when we talk about the team top prospect list, like how many are like 50 future value guys, 50 plus,
so
that it's one little thing that can elevate them into that conversation. It would start to get pretty hard, but I think it would almost be easier because then you could just kind of spray the board a little bit more. Like, I don't care 130 versus 145. They're just 50 plus future value caliber prospects, which is great. Whereas when it's top 100, it's just start to get a little bit anxious because every spot matters a little bit more, and you got to leave some really good players off the chopping block. But yeah, very excited about this Jace Young conversation as well. Guy just continues to hit, and when you're seeing what's happening at the Tigers big league level and the youth movement, Kerry Carpenter gets right back up there after the injury and
kills Kirby, kills him.
Destroys. Riley Green struggling to stay healthy, but when he's been on the field, he's looked like that potential all-star and has at least proven that he's the guy that we always thought he could be. Really, the only downside on the offensive conversation has been really Spencer Torkelson this year, and looks like they're just gonna have to be patient with him. It's similar to the Jordan Walker situation, but you got to feel really good about the offensive side of things, and I think Jace Young just is another player that you can just add to this fold here as soon as next year. And it just feels like, look, not all of them are going to work out. Parker Meadows is swinging it now, well, all of a sudden. But what I do love is they have so many irons in the fire. So, if one or two of the guys at the big league level right now start to falter, great. You got Jace Young ready to go and knocking on the door. And that's not mentioning Max Clark and Kevin McGonigal, who unfortunately just broke his hamate. The telltale sign of a guy with great bat speed. And unfortunately, that'll wipe out McGonigal's season probably the rest of the way. But it'll give him plenty of time to get right and be good to go at the beginning of next year. And he's done more than enough this year, I think. And I think he's proven that he's ready to go as a guy that you can be pushed quickly next year. But the point is they've got those layers of bats all of a sudden. And Jace Young is that next up, kind of layer that we might see in September. If they have 40-man implications, then we'll definitely see him early next year.
Yeah, no doubt. And you didn't even mention Tyrone Lorenzo when you were going through that high A team. Like, Lorenzo is sitting there in West Michigan.
Homered twice yesterday, by the way.
There we go, man. And it seems like they have a short-term answer at shortstop when they inevitably pull the plug on Javier Baez. Trey Sweeney is swinging it right now in AAA.
What's happening?
I don't know, man. I'll tell you what. I was really impressed with that entire week that he had in Indianapolis, like consistently 106, 108, 108, 105. was like, whoa, dude, he's really hitting it right
Eh,
now.
Remember one thing we did say on this show is 'cause we love to like dive into small trades and break them down. Said I'd rather have Trey Sweeney than Yorbit Vivas, and
Yep.
I mean it looks like that could be the case. That said, I was very confident that the production would hit a wall when he leaves the PCL, and he'd be fighting more for that, low 700s, play decent defense, hit righties a little bit better than that, and you can kind of platoon your way into getting by at shortstop in the meantime. But all of a sudden, it looks like in this change of environment, it's not just the production. He's in the ball hard, like hard. The EVs have been impressive. So I'm excited about that too, just because look, anyone's better than Javi Baez. So
Right.
hopefully they'll cut that tie loose and go forward with Sweeney the rest of the year and see what he can do before next season. But that's for another episode.
Yep.
And we are going to talk about prospects who just missed.
I want to spend 5 minutes, 9 minutes on Caden Dana here with the LA Angels. Caden Dana was one of the 10 that was listed in the article at justbaseball.com that just missed the top 100. We answered a mailbag question about Caden Dana, so we don't need to go too far in depth. But if you want to just rehash, like Spark Note, the main points as to why Caden Dana was off the top 100.
Yeah. So just in case someone stumbled upon this episode, not the other one. It's just more quality of stuff and seeing how it translates to the big league level.
Yeah.
Fastball slightly above average, slider above average, maybe flashes plus. No third pitch at this stage, and I think it's a guy that's executing quite well. In a league that if you execute quite well, see Mason Adams, you can dominate because the offense is just so brutal right now. And I think I think these balls are dead across a lot of different landscapes. I think it's just maybe affecting different environments a little bit more, and that's an entirely different conversation. But we talked about it like 3.75 ERA in the Southern League. Like
Yeah.
that should not be a league-wide ERA in
No.
minor league baseball with how bad defense is. And I'm not talking about from an errors perspective. Like there's so many balls, you see it all the time, even in AAA, that should have been caught that aren't, that end up being hits, runs, etc. A 3.75 league-wide ERA is crazy. I'm gonna pull that up later on, and I can assure you it's probably gonna be one of the lowest that we've seen in the Southern League in a long time. But again, good arm. I just think it's a culmination of things where it's executing pretty well. Stuff is pretty decent, and then the environment is just perfect. If you pound the strike zone, you don't have to worry about getting beat. Fly ball pitcher in that environment with the way the ball's just not going anywhere. Great situation for him, and I think that's why he's been able to put up some fantastic numbers. Just looks like a back end of the rotation guy for me.
Southern League ERA is 3.75. PCL ERA is 5.37. We should not have that drastic of a difference in
No,
minor league baseball. Like that's why we need an ERA plus in minor league baseball. We need it so bad, and we have to find somebody to do this for us. And like this would be the most utilized thing in the history of ever when it comes to
oh my
pitching
gosh.
prospects.
Oh my gosh, it would. And that's why, like, when we do the trivia sometimes where you're like, oh, who's the ERA leader and who's the leader in these statistics? I
Yeah.
don't know always because I'm not looking at that very often. I'm looking at the stuff. I'm looking at the pitch shapes. I'm looking at the underlying data, the end zone whiff and things like that. But there'll be
Yeah.
points in times where I'm like, wait, I don't even know what this guy's exact numbers are because I haven't even looked in a little bit. Like, especially with the pitchers, I just don't care about the numbers nearly as much.
Yeah, I guess like I still care because at the end of the day, it's production and
For
it's,
sure.
run prevention. Like that is the goal here. And, like a guy can absolutely climb because he, throws an 18-inch vert from a 5.5 release. Like that's awesome. But like at the end of the day, you don't climb because of that. You climb because of that and an ERA sub three
Sure.
and like that kind of thing.
Absolutely, absolutely, and like of course when guys are lighting it up, like you're gonna catch they're gonna catch your attention, but then you're gonna quickly look and see okay what does the underlying data look like? How
Right.
sustainable is this? So it's kind of like a chicken or the egg thing, anyways. And I'd rather skip the step and always look at the underlying first. But at the same time, like I think it'll be fun to see how he does in AAA and. Hopefully they get him out of AA sooner rather than later. I'm surprised how long he's been there, considering the way that the Angels like to do things.
By the way, either later this week or beginning of next week, I want to talk about Andrew Morris in the Twin system
Mm-hmm.
because I just saw that guy's AAA debut and I was like, like something about this doesn't make sense, but a lot of it makes perfect sense. So we'll talk about him a little bit later. Another guy that we literally answered a mailbag question on was Justin Crawford of the Philadelphia Phillies, and Justin Crawford just missed. You want a spark note, like again, why he just missed the top 100?
Yeah, it's swing mechanics. Don't really love them. And I don't think there's a lot of quickness there, bat speed wise, relative to where he needs to be. Launch angle is quite negative. So when you have a negative launch angle and lack some bat speed,
Against
I,
fastballs. Negative
yeah,
launch against fastballs.
yeah,
Yeah.
like it's going to be really hard to succeed that way. Flies, hits the ball harder than you'd expect, but I think some of that's because of the length to the swing. This is a guy that I might just have to wear it and just say, okay, I was wrong. He somehow 63% ground ball rated himself all the way to the big leagues. And you mentioned Raimel Tapia, like Raimel Tapia himself to a regular role. Maybe he can do that because he's so fast and a good defender and whatever it may be. Or maybe he finds a way to elevate more. I will say that the field of hit is impressive in terms of just being able to have some barrel accuracy, but he doesn't pull the ball in the air at all. I think he has pulled one extra base hit this season or a couple at most. So that on top of a chase rate near 40%, like I just don't expect this to be sustainable unless he makes a swing adjustment. If he does, then we'll be very excited about him. I don't really see this translating into success against more advanced pitching.
Our guy MILB Central got like video of the one pull side extra base hit he's had this year. It's like seeing the eclipse. Like our guy was in the path of totality for a Justin Crawford pulled ball in the air that went for extra bases, which was great.
Yeah. Oh, and Chase does an awesome job. I
Amazing.
think the actual number is like 6. Hold
Yeah,
on.
but what
But
a
I don't know how many
six.
were in the air. Regardless, he really struggles to get the ball in the air pull side and just get it in the air, period. A 63% ground ball rate's just tough to get behind.
Yep. All right, next guy, and the last like real quick guy that we got to get through is Moises Ballesteros of the Cubs. It's been pretty well documented, I think, but again, like Spark Note version of why he missed the top 100. You view him as a DH.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I just don't see how he's gonna catch consistently at the big league level. And yeah, people were pushing back on that. Are the Cubs pushing to make a massive trade for Logan O'Hoppe if they're confident, even relatively confident, in Moises Ballesteros' catching abilities? Because that trade would have started with Owen Casey and finished with someone who's still hurt too, by the way.
Yeah.
So like I thought that was kind of telling in itself. And that came out after our rankings. But that was the sentiment that I've continued to get from scouts, people that work for other teams, whatever it may be, is just, wow, such a good bat. Nobody's banking on this guy being a catcher. Doesn't mean he can't do it. Like he might have this epiphany this offseason and come back and the body looks better. But I mean, we were talking about it going into this year. We said the same thing last year. And then early this year, I texted you. I said, the body might have even backed up a little bit more. That said, he's been awesome offensively. And this is a guy that can be that, above average bat. But when you're this small as well, unfortunately, he can't play first. He'd be the shortest first baseman, I think, in Major League Baseball history. And then on top of that, he can't really move laterally that well. So there's no chance he's going to be able to play first. So it's just bad defensive catcher or DH. That just puts way too much pressure on the bat, which I do like. But then that bat needs to be Marcell Ozuna if you're going to be full-time DH. Think about how many full-time DHs there are. JD Martinez, but that guy was playing the outfield as he came up. Like if you're coming up as a DH, you're not going to be considered as a top 100 prospect unless you're literally like Lazaro Montes. But even Montes might be able to play a little first, might be able to be stashed in a corner outfield spot.
Yeah.
Even if they're bad out there, it's more valuable than a total detriment at catcher because there's nowhere else you can stick Ballesteros where he wouldn't actually be a massive liability. That said, like if he keeps smashing, he could still be a top 100 guy just because the bat is so impressive. But I know people mention age to level a bunch. I get it, but the age to level thing doesn't really matter for me because I've always believed in the bat. It's just how does that work at the big league level? How is this guy going to be a 2-3 player?
Yeah.
He would have to be one of the best hitters, I think, in baseball. Like he'd have to be a masher. It'd have to be a 140 WRC plus.
Yeah.
Could he do that? Maybe, but that's like the 100th percentile outcome even for him offensively. So you think you're banking on way too much happening offensively for him to be a regular.
That's the thing. He's just another reminder that this is a war accumulation ranking. And like every top 100 is a war accumulation ranking where you take every piece of the puzzle into account and it creates this beautiful image that is that finished product of a baseball player. And it's like there are just some puzzle pieces that are missing here in Ballesteros' game that are going to limit and kind of cap his war output. It won't cap his WRC plus output, but we're talking in the grand scheme of war. And
Yep.
that's why 80 defenders are very high up. Like PCA, if PCA was a 60 grade center fielder, PCA would not be a top 20 prospect in the game
No,
because
no.
he had flaws offensively and
Oh
those
yeah.
are being exposed to the big league level, but he was an 80 grade defender. So, at the worst, you're getting elite center field defense and a guy that's OPSing 600.
Excellent point. And that's the thing that kills me with Ballesteros. And I love him as a player. I love him as a person too. Like, I don't know. I didn't get to talk to him, but the way he went about his business when we were just watching him his AAA debut, you can tell his teammates like him. You can tell he's just a fun guy.
I
Like,
think hot pink Kyrie is for batting practice.
yeah, like he's just the
That plays.
man. Like, so
Yeah.
I hate that I have to like be this way. And now I always like people like push me into being like more negative on players. Like, I want to see him succeed, but I have to also explain our reasoning before, people just continue to tee off. So, that is unfortunately where it's at. But I'm glad you brought up that point because it really does come down to this where if he's not hitting, the patience is going to be very thin. Whereas, look at the runway that PCA has right now,
Oh my
finally,
gosh.
because of the defense, the stolen bases, whatever.
Dude,
If
how about
Ballesteros,
Rafaela?
yeah,
Rafaela does not get that extension if he doesn't do what he does with the leather.
no. So if he's not hitting, he's going to be out of a job quite quickly because you're not wasting a 26-man roster spot on a third string catcher that you hope can DH.
Yeah.
Like someone was like, oh, we can rotate in once a week a catcher or whatever. No, not how it works. Not going to happen. So either the defense comes a long, long way,
Yep.
which he's thrown out 10% of runners and is not a good receiver right now, or the bat turns into a legitimate everyday big league DH, Marcell Ozuna type of production.
Yep. All right. We can get a little bit more positive now because we've got some guys here that are not on most top 100 lists, but we're very close. And we can say, hey, why are they a borderline top 100 prospect? And that first guy that we got to talk about is Robert Calaz with the Colorado Rockies. Why do you hate him? Why is he outside the top 100? Having said all that, why do you hate him?
I mean, dude, he's doing better than I thought he would in low A so far.
Yeah.
If we're being honest, like it's early, small sample, but he's only struck out 11 times in 10 games. I know that's like not some incredible number. This is a dude that I was concerned about whiff rates at the complex. If I'm concerned about whiff rates at the complex, generally those guys get blown up. They get blown up at the low A, any full season level.
Yep.
It's really nice to see. I'll start with the concern and then I'll flip to the positive and why I think he can actually be a top 100 prospect sooner rather than later. It's just a rigid swing. So it's kind of looks like one swing for one spot at this point. It's very pull dependent, but he's so powerful that he'll miss balls inside out and still go the other way. But it just seems like right now there's not a lot of malleability there. It's stiff for an 18-year-old, and I was kind of worried about how that's going to trend. And considering that that he was running a in zone contact rate of about 70% at the complex, like I just can't push that into the top 100 until I've seen some more in low A. I'd rather be later on a guy than too early on a guy that's whiffing too much at the complex. However, he's seemed to have been better in low A so far, and the approach has actually been pretty decent. This guy has as good a power as you're going to see from an 18-year-old. And I think that's the biggest thing here. 90th percentile of 109 miles per hour. On that alone, he could probably be a top 100 prospect, to be honest. And if you really wanted to just lean into the EVs and let's say that we use just a model to spit out top 100 prospects, his EVs to age are so ridiculous that a model would probably spit him out based on the things that we like to look at as a top 100 guy. So
Who else kind of
this is
fits
more
that
the
bucket?
nuance and concern of just I haven't seen him spoil one pitch of all the video I've seen,
Yeah.
spoil one tough pitch, and his out of zone contact rate is 30%. So I do think it's very one dimensional at this point. He's going to move off a center, but man, you do not find EVs like this from an 18-year-old.
Who else kind of fits that bill in the last couple years? Who are 18-year-olds that fit that EV bill?
I can't really think of one that was putting him up like this. Like this?
Was Montes putting him up like that, or was it just that one pop off 118?
Well, not this consistently.
Got it.
Montes was just, I think, better approach wise and better bat to ball wise. And dude, that guy hits bad balls out.
Yeah.
Uh, he flashed it, but not this much. I mean, when we're looking at
Dominguez?
still no
Okay.
105, 20 batted balls, 105 plus miles per hour already.
Dang.
So like again, like maybe he should be. It just the whiff rates were too much for me, and I could see. I mean, when it's 36% in zone whiff on fastballs at the complex, I'm like, okay, we're gonna put him on the top 100 list, and then he's gonna be in low, and he's gonna strike out 50% of the time.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
there's been players I'm sure that have put up these EVs at the complex or close to it that we can't even think of off the top of our heads because they flopped so hard in full season ball.
Yeah.
So that's the one thing. I'm sure people are probably listening saying this name, this name. I'm sure there's a couple. I can't think of it off the top of my head. If it comes to me by the end of the episode, I will let you know. But the point is there's not a lot. And so I mean, if he shows a 30 hit tool, because right now he looked like a 20 at the complex of points, but like if he can show that he's like 30 to 40 grade, like somewhere between there,
Yeah.
he's probably in just off of the power.
Yeah. How about Jackson Ferris with the LA Dodgers? Jackson Ferris was a guy that was close. And again, he was in that Michael Busch, Yency Almonte deal. It's so funny that like the two lower level guys that the Dodgers got, one is firmly inside the top 100 in Zaire Hope, and Ferris is just outside the top 100. And he looks like the next guy for the Dodgers. We talk about, that crop of pitching that is always matriculating. And last year it was Kyle Hurt, River Ryan. I guess this year was kind of River Ryan too before, TJ. I saw
Gavin
that.
Stone.
That sucks.
Sucks. Absolutely blows. It's just,
yeah, like so brutal. But it was, Frasso last year at Double-A, Emmett Sheehan last year, right? And this year it was Robleski and I guess River Ryan again. But it feels like Ferris is the next one that was really good in high A, just got to Double-A Tulsa.
it's amazing too because the guys that were supposed to be that next wave for them, like just haven't really panned out, right? You look at like Maddox Bruns and Ronan Kopp, and Kopp looks like he can be a guy, but like not to the degree that Ferris looks like he could be a guy. And the Dodgers just go out and acquire another guy that can be part of that next wave, which is crazy.
Think about those two names that you just mentioned. What's the thing that they have in common that the other like breakouts in the Dodgers system buck the trend of? Like those guys struggle to find the strike zone entirely, Kopp and Bruns. But we talk about a Sheehan, like Sheehan was pounding the strike zone. And when he got to the bigs, like, he started to nibble a little bit, but when he was in Double-A, he was firm command of the strike zone. Gavin Stone, what made him that guy? Firm command of the strike zone. Bobby Miller, for that velo, for that stuff, firm command of the strike zone. Robleski, he's always going to throw strikes. River Ryan, always going to throw strikes. The thing that was most surprising to me about Ferris is he was throwing a ton of strikes this year in high A.
Especially compared to what he was doing before. It's Jekyll and Hyde at times, right? Like we'll see him go 7 shutty, no walks. And then there'll be some outings where he battles a little bit, but I agree, man. Like the strides that he has taken from a command perspective have been really impressive because, people always want to do and now he's a Dodger, he's going to be incredible. But I paused a little bit because you saw Maddox Bruns stall from a command perspective. You saw Kopp stall from a command perspective. So I'm like, okay, can they get this 6'4" lefty right? And Jackson Ferris. I think they have. And maybe some of that might just be him maturing and just kind of learning the way his body moves because he's 20 years old and he's a 6'4" high school drafted lefty. But he's been really solid this year. And I think the big part of that has been locating the slider consistently, which he's landed for a strike at a 67% clip. Fastball command could be a little bit more consistent, but still it's good enough. 64% strike rate on that. The reason why he didn't quite get in for us, and I think he will be in sooner rather than later, is there's not really a third pitch at this point. The changeup has been incredibly inconsistent, and the curveball has been somehow even more inconsistent between those two pitches, a sub 50% strike rate. So I look at the fastball and slider. I think both those pitches are good. It's a little bit similar to the Dana conversation, except Ferris is a little bit ahead of him because it's a 6'4" lefty, and I think has a little bit more projection. I think the slider's got a little bit better characteristics to it. But I think when you're looking at the fastball and slider, they're good, but I don't know if they're good enough for him to be a two-pitch guy successfully as a starter at the big league level. So I want to see him kind of come along a little bit more with the third offering and or the command, which has come along. But again, if you're going to be a two-pitch guy, then you really got, and when I say two-pitch guy, of course, he's still going to mix in a third one, but it's
Yeah.
really only two pitches that you really respect as a
Right.
hitter. If he's going to be one of those guys, he's got to be even better with the command. So I just need to see one more, even half step forward with a third pitch and or the command. But he is trending in that direction without a doubt.
Do you have the percent, like in terms of percent usage? Do you have the usage of his top two pitches? Because if a guy
Yes.
is in the 80%, 85% ballpark with two pitches, that's like that's a two pitch guy, essentially.
86.
There you go. So he's firmly a two pitch guy. I think 80% is the cutoff, where if you're throwing two pitches 80% of the time, you're a two pitch guy and you
I,
can eliminate that third.
I agree with that. It's funny. I was talking about that with Griff and just like game planning for pitchers and stuff. And like, Will Warren, I know was one that he was like, this is an interesting guy to game plan for. It's so many different pitches. And he was like, we were talking about just kind of settling on, you can't worry about five different offerings. You got to be ready for the ones that, you
Pick
feel
two.
like you're most likely to see. And if he locates the pitch that he throws 5 to 8% of the time, twice, tip your cap.
Yes.
And so, just hearing a hitter talk about it like that too, it's not unique, right? Like all hitters are going to have to go about it that way. And so if you're not really able to do that, to locate that, then the two pitches that they are focused on from you have to be executed because that's what they're focused on. Like everyone's facing Jackson Ferris knowing fastball slider right now. And you're prepared for fastball slider.
And the
And
thing is, they've both been really good.
exactly. And so if he executes those consistently, he can succeed. And we're seeing him executed enough to succeed in high A and in his first start in double A. So that's
Yeah.
why I said like the half step forward, either in the command of those two pitches or with the third pitch there, that I think will be enough to get him into that top 100 range.
So interesting note, relievers, you see very consistent usage rates, outing by outing, right? You see if a guy's 60% heater, you're probably going to see 60% heater there. Like there's really minimal fluctuation with relievers. With back end starting pitchers, there's minimal fluctuation there. With the elite of the elite in the starting pitching department, you will see fluctuation in terms of usage. If you go into a start saying, hey, this guy, let's take Skeens, for example, this year. Skeens is 50% four seamer. He's, 25% splinker and whatever, like slider, curveball in there too. If he feels good with that curveball, the curveball usage is going to go up over the course of a given start. Like a changeup like if he feels good that day, the changeup usage is going to go up because the best pitchers in baseball, if you have the feel for that one, you know that that's not something that was on the scouting report, sharpied and, circled and highlighted. So it's like, hey, I'm just going to go to this all the time. One of the best at it was Scherzer. Scherzer, at the peak of his powers in Washington, would like turn to his fourth pitch, go to it 35% of the time in a given start, and manhandle people. And it's like, oh, I didn't know that pitch was going to be the one that killed me today. But like that's what the elite of the elite do.
Yep. Yeah.
So it's fun.
So where I know you lean a little bit more on, like, I know you're pretty hyped on Ferris. You
Yeah.
think by the end of this year, top 100 guy?
Probably, like assuming that he's heavily protected and he throws well in Tulsa. Like, how does he not go into next year as, hey, he's the next guy in line to come out of that Dodger pitching factory? I feel like that next in line in the Dodger pitching factory is always a top 100 guy.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I see that. I'm excited to see how he does in this double A stretch here.
Yeah. Next guy, and like we're gonna get a little negative for the next two, and then kind of back to the positive spin. Noble Meyer of the Miami Marlins just missed. Why did Noble just miss? Because this guy was ahead of Thomas White for a really long time. I think he was ahead of Thomas White on the last update. Was he not?
He probably was.
I think
Yeah.
he was. What made them flip-flop aside from just the production like on the baseball reference page?
It's just it's so hard to project 19-year-old pitchers, and that part is just one of those things that it's so fluid. But when you have a Thomas White who's so polished with it with the three pitches and I think the walk rates are a little bit high, but when you look at the way that he can pitch, and the feel for all three of those offerings and the quality of all three of them too. Those are three big league pitches. It's easy to see to me that he's the number one pitching prospects in the system, especially because the fastball's been better than Noble Myers, both from a characteristic perspective and from a velocity perspective. Noble, I still think can be a really, really good arm. And I don't think the upside perspective has changed at all on him. I still think he can be the guy that we thought he could be out of the draft and the guy that I saw in the backfields early this year that looks very impressive. I don't know if he's throwing through something, some sort of ailment, maybe that might be bothering him. We'll see, how he looks his next time out. But the velocity has just fluctuated so much where we saw him in spurts of 80 pitches this year, 85 pitch outings where he was sitting 95. And then since then, it's been more 92, 93, and he's had no feel for the strike zone at all. So that paired with the fact that the fastball characteristics just weren't quite what I thought they would be. I think he tried to find a four seamer and a sinker from that, kind of 3/4 release, and they've kind of morphed together, and it's just now one dead zone fastball. And off of that, I think he's also struggling to command it. Sometimes it's running more arm side than he thought, so then he misses with it. The other times he stays more true and vert, and then he ends up either tugging it down or leaving it up. So it just seems like he doesn't quite know what his fastball is going to do at this point, and that's why too many of those pitches are just non-competitive. The slider is as advertised, but when you can't establish the fastball, it's really hard to succeed that way. And then the changeup and curveball just they flashed but haven't been located. It really starts with the fastball for me. Characteristics not being there, velocity being inconsistent, and the command across the board just not being good. I got to see a little bit more before we just say, oh, hey, he was the top prep arm, quote unquote. So like, we're just going to put him in there. Like you got to be more malleable. We were just talking about the draft and how like you can't just regurgitate your priors because you want to be stubborn. Like if Christian Moore lights the world on fire and starts hitting high fastballs, just say that was a bad read by me swing wise and adjust. I'd rather be wrong once than wrong twice. So like with Noble, I just thought about it from what I've seen so far. If I was, building an organization, I'd be excited about the upside, but I would take what I presently see from some other pitching prospects paired with the upside, like Luis Morales. I'll just keep referring to him because he's a guy that wasn't on, got on in the back part of the list. The stuff is crazy for him. He's still figuring out how to make that stuff translate into more strikeouts, but you're seeing him survive and fill up the zone enough and give you those flashes. There just haven't been enough flashes from Noble Meyer this year for him to be on the list, but he's so damn close. And again, he could finish the year with 5 straight really good starts. Everything comes back together and it's like, oh, there it is again. But we just haven't seen it. So he just kind of slid a little bit off, but it wasn't really a fall, if that makes sense.
Got you. Yeah, no, that makes sense. All right, we're going to get to another high school guy in the 2023 draft here in a moment. But before that, want to tell you about GameTime because GameTime is now an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting big league and minor league tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the GameTime app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. So you get killer last minute deals, all in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. GameTime takes the guesswork out of buying Major League and minor league tickets. Use GameTime for last-minute deals. Save up to 60% off buying for concerts, sports, comedy, theater, list goes on. Lowest price guarantee. Again, panoramic seat views, all-in prices. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, use code JUSTBASEBALL, all caps, one word, for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code JUSTBASEBALL for $20 off. Download the GameTime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Now we go to Arjun Nimmala with the Toronto Blue Jays. And Arjun was a guy that was one of the early high school guys on the top 100 list last year. It was Nimmala and Dylan Head that really jumped out. And it's like, oh, you feel really strongly about these guys being there. Nimmala had a brutal start to the 2024 season. Ended up on the dev list. And since coming off the dev list, he's looked like a top 100 prospect. But I know when we talked about Nimmala throughout this whole update process, we kept going back to the fact that he ended up on the dev list.
Yeah.
Like that, I understand when he came off, he looks the part. If he never went on, he might be a top 100 prospect. But like he was bad to the point that he got on the dev list.
He got on the dev list. Like, and look, we're not going to hold it against him for the rest of his life, I promise. But like, it's an important point to make there. I've seen so many players now come off of the dev list, look good for a few weeks, and then they can't get back again. The dev list, the whole point of that is so that you can go into a controlled environment, either run simulated at bats or legitimately not playing games for a little bit and get your mechanics right. And they're going to watch over you, especially if you're a first round pick, and they're going to film you and they're going to give you all of your information and you're going to get everything you need to make sure that when you go back, you are prepared and ready to go.
Yeah.
Then a month in or a couple weeks in, you're back into the throes of the season again. How do you handle that? You're going to hit adversity again. It's going to happen. It's baseball. How do you adjust? Your timing is going to get thrown off. You're going to have some bad habits creep back in. How do you fend those back off? You can't just go on the dev list every time you slump. So look, Nimmala, there's so many reasons why I'm rooting for him. And just the cultural aspect is so freaking cool.
Yeah.
So like,
so cool.
I think he's gonna be good and successful. And I this is a name that I fully expect to be on the list next year. But right now, and we try to do this for a few reasons. So one, give fans an idea of, what the list or like what teams may view the top 100 prospects to be. But beyond that, also like it's at this moment, right? Like at this present moment, if you're playing fantasy, whatever, even though this is more driven towards major leagues, and that's why we talked about like the defense, things like that. But I know it's a tool for a lot of people in that respect too. Like, how should Nimmala be considered in stacking up against, a bunch of these other prospects at this present moment? And at this present moment, there's just too much uncertainty to have him, I think, ahead of some of the other players that we have there. There's uncertainty with all of them, and it's all relative.
Yeah.
But, like a Braylor Guerrero, who I know unfortunately did get banged up, but from an offensive perspective, like plenty of risk there. But the guy has not really hit a wall to the degree that he's had to be like shut down and adjust the mechanics. I really like the swing mechanics that Braylor Guerrero has. So with Nimmala, I liked the swing mechanics. Then they got away from him a little bit. And now he's reining it back in. And now I still think it's a little bit pull dependent and it sells out for lift. So I want to see if he's able to manage that, because when you are a hitter like that, which you can succeed, you have to have a certain approach. You have to be able to repeat your moves very consistently. And so I just want to see if he can do that over a prolonged period of time now that he's back off the dev list. I think he can. And clearly, like the power is there. 13 home runs in 70 games in an environment that's not easy to homer in. I think if you can if you add also the rookie league games, but has not really gone the other way at all. He's out and around the baseball, and I think he can get spun to death pretty good right now. So I just want to see how that improves. And like sinkers have just chewed him up because he's so lift heavy and just trying to get everything up in the air. So I just want to see more at this point. I think that's just the easiest way to boil it down to is just need a little bit more runway. There's just been a lot happening here, but there's still so much to love.
Yeah. Back to the positive guys here. Cooper Pratt with the Milwaukee Brewers. And we saw Pratt play in the Futures game this year. And this, like, we've talked about Pratt a decent bit over the last few weeks. He's really the perfect example of draft excellence in recent years from the Milwaukee Brewers. And it seems like they have another guy, man. Luke Adams ended up on the top 100. Yafri Rodriguez ended up on the top 100. And Pratt, it's kind of cool to see him not far off.
Mm-hmm. He was really impressive at that Futures game in terms of just the way he went about his business. We were watching infield, outfield, and it's kind of like we're a little bit far away in terms of being able to see the names and everything. And usually I can have a pretty good idea of who's who just off like the build and the actions. But for a second, I'm like, who is that? Who's that?
Yeah.
Because he's just moving so fluidly at short. And I know Cooper Pratt's 6'3", 6'4". And I'm like, wait, that's Cooper Pratt. He was moving really well, I think, for a guy that, like, is he going to be a superb defender at short? Probably not, but he can play short. And I thought as an amateur, just looking at the build and everything, like, okay, that's a guy that, might end up moving to third, but that'll be a welcomed problem because then he can tap into more power. Right now, that's the big question. And I think the EVs were what ultimately held us off from him and just not quite getting into that top 100 was that, you're going to need to see a little bit more slug, even at shortstop on the left side of the infield. If he was a plus defender at short, then I could maybe tolerate the 90th percentile being 100 miles per hour. But he's not. He's able to stay there potentially, which is very valuable. But if you can do that, you got to swing. You got to swing it more. So the field to hit really good. The pitch recognition very good. All those things I really like, and the Brewers do a great job of just continuing to identify those types of prospects. However, need to see a little bit more juice. I think he could very easily grow into it. Doesn't turn 20 for another 4 days. So happy early birthday to Cooper Pratt. But he's going to need to grow into more power. And then when he does grow into that more power, did that take him off of short and end up moving him to third? If that happens, then okay, that power needs to not be average. It needs to be above average. So there's just this sliding scale here of things that may happen one way or another. And I got to kind of wait to see how that goes until he's considered a top 100 prospect. Because if he does add some power and then moves to third, if he's a hit first, average power hitting third baseman, and maybe with really good defense there, he's a top 100 guy, but like it's a different profile now all of a sudden. So he's a tweener right now in terms of the archetypes. And I like to group a lot of these players up in archetypes and then see, do they succeed at their, archetype? I don't really know what his is at this point, which is not a bad thing because there's no rush for it. It's like kind of figuring out what you want to do in life in college, right? Like you don't have to fully figure that out at 19.
I don't know.
But
Tall shortstop, you kind of have to be Seager, right?
yeah, he needs to also hit left-handed then.
Shit. Yeah, flip around so you can be Corey Seager and fit the bucket.
But that's pretty much what I'm waiting on here. So another guy that's just more runway, and just need to see a little bit more.
Yeah. This guy, George Klassen, older, but hey, he's up with the Rocket City Trash Pandas now. I'm telling you, they don't care about high A, they don't care about low A, they don't care about triple A. Like the only thing I hear about Angels prospects is at Rocket City. And like all these guys are getting promoted from Rocket City. It feels like they skip high A entirely with like all these guys. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but it's really only the double A affiliate that the Angels use. And Klassen, understandably so, he's in double A, but he looks the part with the Angels at this point. Could he start games for the Angels in September? Yes or no?
I don't know. Maybe not after the first Rocket City start. I don't know.
Man,
First one didn't go great. 3 innings, 5 hits, 5 runs, 4 walks, 1K.
yeah, tough eat.
That's not great. But they started him in Modesto for some reason before that. Or sorry,
Yeah,
against Modesto in Inland Empire.
Yeah, and he shoved.
Shoved, obviously. He went from high A to low A.
Right.
But with him, it's interesting because I think that there's a guaranteed big league role here when you have the two breaking balls that he has. It's that cutter or slider at 90, and then this power curve ball that's just devastating. We've talked about it. You combine those two opponents are hitting below 100 against it, but it's a high effort delivery, like very high effort delivery. And on top of that, a fastball that has good run, but just he seems to struggle to command consistently. And when I see a guy with, fringy command and it's a max effort delivery, I get concerned about their ability to improve that command.
Yeah.
And when it's so high effort and he really like tugs the head, kind of pulls the shoulders and lets it rip. I think he's just a reliever long term and he could be a really good one. He could be multi-inning. I just don't see a starter here. Maybe he finds a way to just throw strikes in that high effort and get ground balls enough to do it. The stuff is ridiculous, but I just think there's too much reliever risk and effort in the delivery paired with like the fringy command.
Got you. How about Kevin Alcantara with the Chicago Cubs? Kevin Alcantara is a guy that has been on the top 100 for it feels like a very long time at this point. And it doesn't necessarily feel fatiguey. I know he's, gotten off to an okay start with Iowa. He got up to AAA, and it's fun to see the highlights at a new level for Kevin Alcantara, but at the end of the day, it's like, when is it really going to blossom for you? And I feel like this is just kind of a ran out of patience thing with Kevin Alcantara.
Yeah, that was a big part of it. And it's funny because like he's actually been balling out, but he's done this. He does this every year where like in the back end of the year, he really starts to heat up. And then we get excited going into the next year. And then he starts kind of slow. And I don't really know where, like, I don't know where to like look at this point in terms of what he needs to do, because I just don't know if it's reasonable to expect him to be able to do the things that he like kind of needs to do. So it's like, should I just look elsewhere in terms of, can he just lean into the strengths? Can he be a superb center fielder? Can he get away with the ground ball rate through doing other things better? Could the approach continue to just get better? Like it's a really interesting conversation because a guy that's been a top 100 prospect, I think as long as anybody right now, because of just how long he's been exciting and projectable and whatever it may be. It's a 799 career OPS and 368 minor league games as of like a week ago.
Yeah.
However, his last 30 games between Double A and now his promotion to Triple A, he's hitting 322 with a 925 OPS.
Damn.
So he starts doing these things. You get all excited. He cut the chase rate down to 24%. We did the same dance last year. And I saw him in the AFL and it didn't look good. And then the early parts of this year, it just didn't look great. He puts the ball on the ground so frequently. The swing is just long. And
Yep.
naturally, because he's 6'6", long levered hitter. But when you're 6'6" and long levered with a launch angle that's below 5 degrees, just consistently every single year, I just feel like he looks crowded consistently. It's very similar to Jesus Sanchez to me, where like he's going to have stretches where everything's in sync, everything's on time. And it's like, whoa, that's impressive. He's locked in. He's going to break out. And then it just gets thrown off so easily because everything is so long. And a pitcher that executes well can blow you up inside, get you to start cheating. You start to cheat a little bit and they get you chasing. And that's why his chase rates have fluctuated so much. He's better than Jesus Sanchez, though, I think, because he can play really good defense in all three spots. And I do think that there's a little bit better, I think just a little bit better ability to get the ball in the air at their age at this point. Like when Jesus was 22, I just don't know if he's going to be able to hit the ball in the air enough to tap into his power. And I just don't think the pitch selection is good enough. But you never know because he's 22, just turned 22. And the fact that he can go get it in the outfield really helps. And I think we'll carve him out a big league role for a long time, regardless.
Yep. We're done with the guys that were on the article at justbaseball.com. Now, four guys quick that we wanted to mention on the Just Missed here. And we'll start with Jake Bloss with the Toronto Blue Jays. Bloss was one of the key returns in the Yusei Kikuchi deal, and they got three big leaguers now. Will Wagner just got up, what was it, 3-hit day in his major league debut for Will Wagner?
And I think he had 2 hits yesterday.
Yeah, come on, man. So Will Wagner is a Blue Jay, Joey Loperfido is a Blue Jay, and Jake Bloss has the makings of a starting pitcher for the Toronto Blue Jays. They got a starter with 6 years of control in return for a rental starter, and a good one, but a rental starter.
I think Bloss is so high floor, and really with a couple graduations, probably slots right in. Fastball is just solid characteristics. It's 94. It's about big league average velocity, slightly above big league average velocity for a fastball, slightly above average extension, slightly above average carry, and he fills up the zone. Great. That fastball is going to play just fine as long as he's consistently locating it. Then you have the feel for a cutter, the feel for a curveball, and then a sweeper, and then a changeup. And he can just come at you with all these different offerings and just keep you off balance. I don't think any of the pitches are clearly plus, but I think almost across the board, it feels like he has average or above average pitches that paired with his ability to sequence and execute. Like if he can consistently do that, that'll be the big, I think, just difference maker at the big league level.
Yeah.
I just think it's such a high probability for. And there's probably number 3 upside if he can find a little bit more with the stuff and maybe locate that slider and changeup a bit more consistently. But the fact that he can come at you with 5 different pitches, really, that you have to respect to a degree, like we were just talking about, pretty hard to game plan for a guy like this, especially when the fastball is good. It's not great, but the fact that with that assortment of pitches, usually guys like that are trying to mask the fastball. He can buzz that thing by you. It's got good enough characteristics, and the command is good enough, and the velocity is good enough where that's a good enough hitter.
Yep. 2 guys in the National League West here. Alex Freeland to the LA Dodgers started this year by repeating high A Great Lakes. He's so much more than that now. He's got a week of AAA ball under his belt, and this guy has been one of the breakouts in minor league baseball this year. He's high 29 bags in 31 attempts. He's got 14 pumps in, what was it, a month and a half of high A ball. 23 games of high A ball, 74 games of AA ball. He's got a 403 OBP, man. This guy is putting together as well-rounded a year as we've got among minor league hitters.
I mean, and he's a switch hitter, but that was the funny thing that I actually ended up delving into. So much better from the left side.
Which is good.
Yeah, I'd rather that, but the right side's actually kind of bad.
Yeah.
So that did hold him back to a degree.
Yeah.
Bad. He's hitting 217 from the right side with a 70% in zone contact rate. The swing decisions are really impressive. The EVs are solid. And especially from the left side, he's just been very productive. So I think it's just solid across the board. He's kind of another one of those 50s to 55s across the board that you could really like. And I think if I just ended up getting more looks at him, maybe I have a little bit more bias towards him and put him in there. I think really the main separator may have just been I haven't seen him as much.
Yeah, he came out of obscurity, relatively
Yeah,
speaking.
but the swing decisions being what they are, the fact that he has been so productive, the fact that he can motor, and I haven't been able to see enough of the defense. This one just admittedly might just be I haven't been able to appreciate Alex Freeland enough to get him in there. We try to canvas everybody as much as we can, but
Yeah.
I'm just being upfront. Like this might have just been a player that we didn't get to see enough of, and I'm excited to dig in more in the coming weeks when we update each of the team top prospect lists. Because I can tell you what, this is a guy that's in the bucket of okay, you could convince me he's a top 100 guy, and he's one of the 50 that you could convince me is like worthy of that. But I think he might be very worthy of that. Like it looks like every time you think he's going to slow down, he picks right back up again. So that is something to watch. But he is still kind of riding a really hot start. But again, every time it seems like he's going to fully hit a wall, he doesn't.
Yep. We haven't gotten a pro look at another guy in the National League West, Kash Mayfield, who was the Padres' first round pick. And I threw him in there because I want you to essentially call your shot on the next Padre starting pitching prospect that, has the makings of like a Snelling and a Lesko before they depleted their value. Like going into 2024, we're looking at, Snelling and Lesko all over again, it seems.
A lot of Snelling similarity.
Yeah.
And maybe the stuff might even be louder. So athletic, the delivery is so smooth on the mound. I really wanted to throw him in there. It's just got to see him professionally.
You're right.
As you said, but I know you love the delivery. Like it is
beautiful.
It's beautiful from the left side, and the fastball jumps. There's a good field of spin already. Like I expect him to come into pro ball and shove, but got to see him do it first before we just put him in there because he was older for the high school class. So those are all things to just kind of monitor. But I expect this guy to be the next, as you mentioned, Padres climber and the next guy that it's like, oh man, they grabbed him in the back end of the first. Like one of my favorite just pitching prospects in that class and one of my favorite deliveries.
Speaking of beautiful deliveries, I'm trying to find this kid's name, this high school right-hander in next year's draft class, 2025, Seth Hernandez. Have you seen this guy's delivery at all?
No.
It's like, dude, he's hitting 100, high school righty. Like, go check out the delivery. I mean, we could be looking at another guy like that. Last one that we got to talk about is Kumar Rocker. We are week and a half, 2 weeks removed from the top 100 update. A week removed from the top 100 update. If we did it right now, is he in the top 100?
Yes. Next guy that graduates, Kumar Rocker.
Yeah. So he was 101.
Yes. There was just another one where it's like, we can't put him in after 7 innings. Like what if the velo dips right back down right after?
Yeah, but shit, those 7 innings were awesome. And then guess what? We have another start under our belts.
4 innings, 3 hits, no runs, no walks, 8 Ks. Average 97.5. They stretched him out about 9 more pitches to 52. This guy's a dog. This guy's an absolute dog. Delivery looks great. He's separating the 2 fastballs now where it's 4-seam, 2-seam. He's manipulating the slider into different iterations of it, a bigger one, a shorter, harder one. I mean, the fact that he is doing all of this, man, it's so exciting. I really hope he can stay healthy. He's running that fastball up to 99 and having the life at the top with the ground ball ability of the sinker and then manipulating that slider into multiple pitches takes a lot of pressure off of needing that definitive third pitch. He kind of already has 3+, right? Because he's got the 2 fastballs and that slider really looks like 2 different pitches as well. Sometimes even looks like a third. You'd like to see him mix something else in there. And we'll see if he, starts to find some more confidence in that changeup. He's only thrown a couple this year, but I think he could really succeed just off the fastball, the 2 fastballs and the iterations of the slider. So especially if he's commanding the way that he has. And since coming back, he's 24 strikeouts, 2 walks. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah. There's nothing more you can ask of him. That's our list.
I'm sorry. That's it. And again, there's always a bunch more prospects that we could talk about. We'll continue to talk about prospects performing down the stretch and whether they're candidates for the top 100 and, tie them into the conversation of players that maybe were considered in the top 100 as they pop up.